88.3, we're the best in community and old school classics. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to Soul Music Spotlight. Of course, it's been a blessing to us. Right now, we want to switch gears and kind of move on to community news and views, where we kind of shine a little bit of light on historical facts and build on the legacy of those who've gone before. On our line today, we got a real special gentleman that's been doing a lot of researching. We want to share some information with Southwest Georgia, and it's, believe me, a blessing to have him here. I just want to say good morning to him. How you feeling this morning, Philip?
How you doing this morning?
We're doing wonderful this morning. I'm going to drop this bed of music in the background and just comment on down. You been doing some great research, and I kind of stumbled into you online, and I was quite interested because what we're all about here, we're all about building on the legacy of those who've gone by before by shining light on history. History is so important, and there's some stories that need to be told. So right here in Southwest Georgia, we just like to share with our listeners some stories on a national level. And I know you have a very interesting story. Can you just tell us just a little bit about who Mr. Phillip is this morning?
Oh, yes, sir. Well, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak to your listeners. When it comes to me, I'm just a dad, a husband. We are just working very hard to get our news and information to our community. And I believe in humility, being a servant to the people, because we have too many people that have egos and don't want to be in a position of a servant. There are a lot of people who are deceived in this system that we live in because it's propaganda and there's a lot of evil going on. So what we're trying to do is bring the truth and information so we could help free our people from the deception that we see going on every single day. As you see now, we have people, politicians who are trying to fight against the truth movement, but it's not really working because the people is not feeling that. So the people are waking up, and we're very glad to help more people open the eyes to the system that we're living in today.
Now, since you got this information, were you able to kind of organize a group of people that will support what you're doing? Because what you're doing is so important. Were you able to get some kind of organization going?
Well, what I'm doing is building our media company, and behind the scenes, I'm working with other people to help them do the same thing, because it's not just me needs to do it, it's many others. So as we grow and more people are starting to come in to help us grow, and it's a slow process, but it happens. More and more people are catching on to the vision that we have. So my ultimate goal is to spread this knowledge and teach many people, not just myself, how to build media companies and how to put out the truth, which can help further the knowledge within our community.
That's so good. When it comes, sometimes, some people hide the truth and some people hide from the truth. People right now are kind of delusional. One guy, he made reference to us being in what we call a post-truth era. That's why history is so important. So what I always try to do is try to look back on actual facts and make them factual acts in front of the people. Right now, I know you got a story. Want to get right to the story. You reside, which area are you living in?
Houston, Texas.
Okay, you're in Houston. And this story takes place in Mississippi.
Okay.
Okay, and can you just give us an overview of what this is all about?
Okay, what story are you referring to? Because I'm kind of blank.
Okay, about the Natchez.
Oh, okay. Yes, yes,
Okay.
sir. That story, and a lot of people had got a hold to that story about the Devil's Punch Bowl and
Uh-huh.
how after, slavery, the Union soldiers had actually captured freed slaves and put them in a concentration camp called the Devil's Punch Bowl, where they separated the men from the women and children with a wall. A lot of the men was working so hard that a lot of them say, I want to go back to Master's plantation. This is how bad it is. These so-called Union soldiers that they try to prop up and say, oh, look, they freed the slaves, which anybody who knows anything about the Civil War, it had nothing to do with freeing slaves. It was all about economics. That's it.
Absolutely.
Um, Go ahead.
Just to add, when you say the Union soldiers and you had the Confederate soldiers, and for some reason here in the South, we kind of studied the Confederate history, but very little history dealing with the Union soldiers. And usually we kind of took the premonition that the Union soldiers were the ones that helped, African Americans. That's why the story was so. I was just so drawn to this story because it turns the tide a little bit. Can you give us some information there?
Oh, yes, sir. Well, we have to also look at that in the system that is we living in, the system of white supremacy. It is not for us, no matter what side it's on. And you can look at it historically because we got freed, but how is it we were still getting killed? And they always, even to this day, say, well, it's the South, it's the South. Well, how is it that I'm doing current news stories in every state that's in the Union that's outside of the South? It's a
Mm-hmm.
whole system of white supremacy as the problem, and racism and bigotry is the problem. We can't relegate that to one area of the country. So it's the same thing back then. They had people in the North that maybe wasn't slave owners, but they really didn't like black people because a lot of people was thought that they were better than black people because they wasn't slaves. Now, of course, you have your abolitionists who really, had the scriptures to feel that, what we're doing here is wrong. This needs to be stopped. But rest assured, I wish the abolitionists and that mindset was the all over the whole country. But Lincoln has said many times that if I can keep the slavery and save the Union, I would do it. If I free the slaves and then save the Union, I would do it. So really, he didn't care either way. He just wanted to save the Union. But for him to say that, well, if I can keep slavery and save the Union, people need to pay attention to that.
Okay. Now, can you just share what have you learned about the concentration camps in Mississippi, just overall?
Well, if anything, it should be more of a case of reparations for the
Okay.
black man and black woman of America. You see, everybody else have gotten reparations. The Native Americans have gotten reparations. The Jewish people have gotten reparations. I don't even understand why they even getting reparations at all because the Holocaust didn't happen here. America had nothing to do with what Adolf Hitler had to do, but yet they're getting reparations. We had the Asian people get reparations for being put in concentration camps, but we had slavery that was legal 246 years, and yet the black man and black woman get nothing. Another 100 years of Jim Crow, the black man and black woman get nothing. And then
Okay.
even to this day, slavery is not abolished because it transferred with the 13th Amendment from private slavery to state-run slavery, which is prison. If you read the 13th Amendment, it says slavery is abolished except for crime and punishments. So they
Uh-huh.
still committing slavery in prison today.
Okay. Dealing with the prison industrial complex, and it's almost like a legal setup. You might. When it comes to the education system, where do we stand there? Where do you stand with this information?
Horrible for our children. It's not for us at all. I just recently did a story about how blatant the racism is. They came up with a law in Missouri that if a child get into a fight and injures someone, they can be put with a Class E felony.
Mm.
And that felony can carry up to 4 years in jail, no matter the age. Now, I don't understand why every person in the state of Missouri isn't screaming, yelling. I don't understand why the ACLU isn't out there. I don't get it because this law is supposed to go into effect January the 1st. They're not worried
Mm.
about educating our children. If you do the research in Missouri, they suspend more black children. We have so many white supremacists that's teaching our children every day. These white supremacists is being caught on Facebook revealing who they really are, but yet they're teaching our children. And you wonder why we have this prison, school to prison pipeline. See, my solution to that is we as black people need to start creating schools again like we used to, because we dependent on those who are outright white supremacists, those who follow KKK and I call them alt devil movement ideology. We need to create our own stuff because we at a point, brother, that we have to start doing for self. Time out from all the stuff that we're doing.
Okay. Okay. Very good. And believe me, just trying to get a little bit more intrinsic with our solution, as opposed to just the problem. I'd like for you to share this story in Mississippi is so important because this story is almost like a springboard to the corruption, a springboard to the injustice that has gone on for so long unknowingly. And right now, the stories need to be told because they're not just told so that we can have some kind of mad position against white folks, but they're told so that they can be inspiration for people that don't want to practice moving forward. Could you just share that story? We need that story, very important.
Well, with what you just said, people do need to get upset. I'm not saying just getting upset for no reason, but you need to be upset that this history was hidden from you. That's first and foremost, and that was done on purpose. You have to. I interviewed Jane Elliott, and she even said that in our education system, it indoctrinates you into white supremacy. So in the system of white supremacy, it's about protecting and defending whiteism. So do you think revealing that black people were put in concentration camps, 20,000 of them killed, dying from multiple diseases? I mean, do you really think they want to teach that? Same thing with slavery. Same thing with, Black Wall Street and how, we build all kind of towns like Rosewood constantly. What's that thing? Slocum, Texas is another one that how they come in, they destroy our towns or run us out of our own towns that we built with our own hand. You think they really want to perpetuate that narrative to say, look, we have been the most violent group of people for the past at least 500 years in this hemisphere to the black man, the brown man, and the native man? They're not going to do that because they push a narrative, my brother, that they are the most sweet, innocent, they don't do nothing wrong people. And that is a lie. And the truth of history bears that out.
What do you feel about our people who almost I would say fund their own oppression?
Unfortunately, due to us coming over here and stripped of our language, stripped of our heritage, literally stripped down to not knowing who you are. So we replace that with materialism. We think getting materials and identities of some of these white designers that don't even like us from the get-go. We go into Versace, which that came out, they had a special code to label when black people are in the store. Or you had the sister going to Victoria's Secret, one sister that was stealing, and they should, stop her, but they put out all the black women, and yet this same woman say she'll go back to Victoria's Secret, that sort of thing. We need to take more pride in ourselves, but the only way we can do that is that we have to learn who we are. And then they put out the propaganda that we are just the worst people and we constantly killing each other. If you look at the spectrum of time, and even though, yes, killing each other is bad, I speak against that, and I feel we need a mass separation within our community between this thug mentality and this hood rat mentality versus the black people that want to move on, because we have to separate that. We can't just mix and mingle all that and expect to build anything. But in the spectrum of time with the killing, it's actually been a small amount of time, and all that's been engineered by the system of white supremacy. Who put crack cocaine in the black community? We ain't have no planes to do that. We didn't have no boats to do that. We don't build guns. We don't manufacture guns. We don't do any of that. All this mess is put into the community. If you look at the man Gary Webb, that was a journalist. He was killed by revealing that they put crack cocaine in the black community. They even have a movie on it called Kill the Messenger, but of course, he supposedly died of suicide, but yet he was shot 3 times in his head. How do you do that? But you know how that goes.
Well, to those who are disillusional when it comes to even a radio show that would host a gentleman that would actually have so much history and so much knowledge of what's been done as well as what need to be done. What do you feel about those people that kind of, they say, oh, listen, Gary, he's promoting this kind of thing. What do you say to that?
Well, at the end of the day, you're in control of your platform, and whoever you bring on, I mean, your audience go enjoy you and what you present. So people are going to talk about you. Even God himself have critics. So I don't really focus on what other people think. I focus on getting the truth out there and making sure our people can open their eyes and wake up. Because if you worry about what people say, you'll be getting blue in the face and you won't get anything done.
Okay. Well, I want to give a little quick rundown about this labor camp, this concentration camp, that most people are very much unaware of. They say slaves made their way to freedom through the town of Natchez, which was a population of 10,000 to 120,000 people almost overnight. In order to deal with the population influx and a recently freed slave, a concentration camp was established to essentially eradicate the slaves. The men were recaptured by the Union troops and forced back into hard labor. The women and children were locked down concrete walls of the camp and left to die from starvation. Wow, how can you do something like that? Many of them died from smallpox disease, and a total of 20,000 freed slaves were killed in 1 year inside the American concentration camps. Union armies did not allow them to remove the bodies from the camp. They gave them shovels and buried them where they dropped. The camp was called the Devil's Punchbowl. The camp was located in the bottom of a cavernous pit with trees located on the bluff above. And today the bluff is known as the Wild Peach Grove. But the locals will not eat any of the fruit because some of them are aware that the fertilization of the trees, of course, you know where it comes from. One researcher has noted that skeletal remains still wash up when the area becomes soaked by the Mississippi River. Even when America tries to bury its ways, America is acknowledged that reoccurring, these stories continue to come up, and now the story, I think, is beginning to grow more and more. And some Caucasian people, like Paula Westbrook from the Delta Paranormal Project, she's speaking out against what has happened. And what do you feel about some of the historians who are now beginning to share some of this history?
I feel it's great. People need to get educated. I feel all people who are just decent people should share what really happened in this country. I think you are a part of a system of devilment if you do not want to share this and you're being a historian. What are you fearing for? This what you do. This is your job. Share history.
Absolutely, absolutely. Any other comments you'd like to share with listeners? Mr. Phillips.
Oh, well, only thing I would like to share is to make sure to research the history of this nation, find out who you are as a person. You can even start off by doing an ancestry DNA test to let you know how, much percent African you are. That can also open your eyes. Trace where your family comes from. Look more into our culture because our culture didn't start off from the plantation fields of America. We are people who have created math, civilization, science. We did all this, and this propaganda in this nation want to let you think that you nothing but a descendant of a slave, but that's not true. Also, create businesses for yourself. We need more black women to create black hair care supplies, and that's a over $500 billion industry that's for black women, and they need to take their industry back. It's sad that only 3% of black people own industry, and 97% is mostly owned by Asian people. That's a big problem, my brother. And so it's something I'm really going to start pushing, at least for our sisters.
Okay.
Go ahead.
If you can share some information about your site and how to get in contact with you, if they want to look on Facebook or whatever, that you share some of that information as well.
Yes, sir. You can find me definitely on YouTube. You can type in The Advise Show TV, TheAdviseshow TV. It'll pop up. I'm also on Facebook, The Advise Show, Twitter. It'd be Advise Show Media or The Advise Show, whatever one that you would like to view, and come and join us. Watch some of the videos that we have. We've just posted another great history story that would be something that would be good for all black people about political racism redefined. So check it out.
Okay, you said political racism redefined.
Yeah, yes, sir.
That's interesting. By the way, you mentioned television. Your show is playing in what areas?
Well, right now we on YouTube, and we're working on some other things about locally, but right now we're on YouTube. We're doing pretty good there. So you can just check us out on YouTube.
Okay, we want to thank you so much, Mr. Phillip, and we just thank you for information. If you can, stay in touch with us from time to time. We're going to be sharing more and more information that you come across with our listeners, and I just want to say thank you once again to your staff and all those that do what you do. Last but not least, got to throw this in. Are you ready for this one?
Go ahead.
Are you ready? Solution. Give us solution. Give us just maybe a 3-point agenda that would be very necessary.
Well, we're coming up on 2017. Assess your life, figure out where you're going, and then create a plan for that. I mean, a lot of people like to talk, but we don't want to do anything. Education is the key. Business creation is the key. And having knowledge of self is the key as well. If we can just start doing those three things, we can branch off to a whole lot of other things.
Okay. We want to thank you so much for your hitting us up and tuning in and sharing with us the information. And hopefully it's been a blessing to someone, because you've really been a blessing to myself. Mr. Phillip and your crew, and that's Advise TV, right?
The Advice Show TV.
The Advise Show TV on Facebook. Make sure you tune in. I want to thank you, Mr. Phillip, and be blessed and have a prosperous 2017. We'll be checking with you in the top of the year, all right?
All right. Happy New Year, brother.
God bless you.